Hello and welcome to this video. So in this video I'm going to tell you how you would rent in London. So I made part 1 of this video on my channel, which involves how you would actually search for a flat share. So if you're living on your own and you want to rent a room, what are the things that you should be looking at and what you should know before renting a flat share. This part focuses on what you should know if you want to rent an entire 1-bedroom flat, ideally if you're living alone or as a couple. So the reason why you'd want to rent a 1-bedroom flat, especially if you're 2 people or living as a couple, is the fact that the price of a 1-bedroom flat is slightly less than renting 2 bedrooms from flat shares. So for example, a flat share could cost easily £900 per calendar month, but for £1,500 you can actually get an entire 1-bedroom flat. Now of course, if you're renting a 1-bedroom flat, you only get 1 room, so ideally this is for couples or friends that are very close. So there are several things that you should know before renting a 1-bedroom flat. So the first thing is deposit. So deposit will be around 5 weeks of your rent. So if your flat costs £1,500 per calendar month, you are expected to pay around £1,800 as a deposit. And now this deposit is slightly different from deposits taken from flat shares, where they usually give everything back. One thing that I have learned the hard way is that when you do rent a flat, especially from a provider such as Dexter's, they do kind of not give the whole deposit back, because so what they do is they take money out for cleaning. So for us, they took around £200 off the deposit for cleaning. Luckily, the person on the phone from Dexter's told us that even if you clean the entire flat by yourself, it will never be a professional clean, and when they come to inspect it, they're just going to untick professionally cleaned and charge you anyway. So our flat was very dirty and we just left it, and of course that kind of made paying 160 or 180 odd pounds a bit easier to bear. So do bear in mind that the deposit you might not get completely, especially if you do certain type of damage to the property, that will be taken off the deposit. The other thing to realize is that you are in charge of the entire flat. So like with a flat share, you might often have cleaners that come in every 2 weeks, but with your own flat, you are responsible for cleaning everything, including the bathroom, including the kitchen and everything like that. Another thing that you should look for before renting your flat is if it's furnished or unfurnished. So if you already have furniture like we had, you can go for partially furnished or unfurnished. So if you have your bed and wardrobe and stuff like that, which might be quite uncommon for someone renting a flat in central London to have, but you could go for unfurnished. And now some places might not like that and they would only prefer it to be furnished, so it is something that you should consider before getting into renting an entire flat. Other things to consider is the fact that bills are not included in the rent price. So if the rent price is £1,500 per calendar month, that does not include water bills, utility bills such as gas and electricity, so that does come as an additional cost. Council tax is something else that you are liable to pay from yourself, but if you're a student, what you can do is contact the council and provide proof that you're a student and you are no longer required to pay council tax, which is what I did and was very nice for me. I highly recommend, when you're looking for a flat to rent, to go through a reputable provider such as Dexter's, because you know with them that they are responsible and that the landlord will not be taking you for a ride, and any dealings goes through them directly and not through the landlord, which can oftentimes be a pain in the neck. One extra thing that you should know about before renting a flat is that you're also liable to change the light bulbs and stuff like that, which I found quite funny. But in a flat share, usually if the light bulb goes, you can ask the landlord for one. There are slight differences between a flat share and a flat. So without further ado, I'm going to go into the computer, I'm going to go into Rightmove, we're going to look at different flats in London and see exactly how you would rent a flat in London. So I'm on my computer now and I've loaded up rightmove.co.uk, and you're greeted with this page. And essentially in the middle you have this typing bar here. What I usually do is press EC1 because that's almost right in the middle of London, so central London, and it allows us to find flats within a certain specified distance around the centre. Now the reason why the centre is important is because London is made of multiple zones, zone 1 being the centre and the middle, which is the most costly and also where most of the offices are and a lot of the big universities. So if you're required to go in and out of the centre, you want to be closer to the centre. So zone 2 is the ring outside of zone 1 and it's slightly further away from the centre but also quite close. Zone 3 is quite far away from both, so it gets cheaper as you go out, but ideally it is nicer in central because of the proximity to all the nice touristy areas and the offices. So we want to press to rent, and we are greeted with all these drop down menus. So typically I wouldn't want to be more than 5 miles away from the center. Of course that's up to you and how far you want to be away from the center. I prefer to be in the center or as close to the center as possible because I like the architecture and also being close to my university. However, a lot of people prefer to be a lot further away from the center, not only because it's cheaper, but because it's a bit bigger and there are more greenlands, so it's a bit more naturey there, but that is up to you. You can change the radius as you wish. The price range, so typically for a 1-bedroom flat, for a reasonable price, so we're not looking at things like £6,000 per month, because of course you can go high in London, but a sensible amount I would say is around £1,500 per month, which is a lot, but if you're 2 people, it is a lot less, right? And a lot similar to a flat share. So number of bedrooms, I would say we're looking for 1-bedroom flat, right? So minimum should be 1 and maximum should be 1, 2. Property type, we'll leave it as is, and added to site, we'll leave that as is. So what we want to do now is press find properties, and then go to filters here and do not show house shares, because we don't want to see house shares at this price. Then we press done, and we are greeted with all these pictures and information boxes, right? So let's open the first one up and kind of do a breakdown of what we are looking at when we're looking to rent a flat in London. The pictures are very important to see. These are the things that you see first of all. So if you don't like it now, you probably will never like it. This place looks nice to me, it looks fine, it looks quite spacious, it has space for a small sofa. Ideally, you know, I would want a bit more space, but right now the prices are so high, you really can't be, beggars can't be choosers. It has a really decent sized kitchen actually, and possibly you can move this closer to the kitchen if you wanted to, the little dining table, and open up the lounge area. One thing I noticed straight away is the fact that it does not have a full-size fridge freezer. So properties like this come on a furnished basis, which means that all the furniture that you will need is already there, so you don't have to pay extra. Especially as a young professional or a student, you don't have the budget or the room to buy furniture, because where are you going to take it with you next? So you have to really think through what kind of items the place has. So this does not have a full-size fridge freezer. It looks to me like it is one of those fridge freezers where you have like the smallest drawer for a freezer and then you have a fridge on top. So if you are someone that cooks a lot, that is not ideal. For me, that would be a deal breaker, because I do like cooking my own food. So that would definitely be a deal breaker, and I don't want to buy another fridge freezer. So that's one thing to consider. Also consider the fact that some places might not have a washing machine, which is essential. So if you're living here full time, you really do need a washing machine, unless you have the funds to, you know, go to the laundrette all the time, which is not very cheap at all. It does have a stove and an oven. For me, an oven is a must because of baking and also just making chicken and stuff like that. So that is very important. If that's something important for you, you should know. But one thing that I would say about the kitchen that does stand out to me is there's a lot of cupboard space, which is definitely a plus. You can see there's a boiler here already. This is the bedroom, and one thing that stands out to me straight away is that they have not taken a picture of the entire bedroom, and there is no wardrobe. So that is a deal breaker for me, because if there is no wardrobe, that means you have to buy a wardrobe, and that's going to cost a few £100s. And if there's no space for a wardrobe, then you know you're gonna have to buy a rail, and that looks ugly, and for me that definitely will be a deal breaker. So these are the kind of things that you don't necessarily realize before renting a flat, and then when you get there you fall flat on your face because of the space constraints and stuff like that. So you do have a very basic bathroom. You know, it has a bathtub, it has a toilet seat and a basin, and it has a shower head on the tap. So just by going through the pictures, you can actually tell a lot about the flat. So one thing I can say about the flat is it's generally good condition. However, it's quite basic. So you're paying £1,450. The next important thing for me is to look at the location. So you are near Clapham Junction, which if you live below this river here, you have to realize that the transport links are not great. So as soon as you fall below the river, the transport links become unbearably bad, and they're not very linked to central. So it is quite far from central London, hence why the price is a bit cheaper. But it is next to Battersea, which is a nice area. It's quite close to Chelsea, so the area is not too bad. It is close to Clapham Junction, but again, the transport links aren't great, but they're also not terrible either. Street view is a very good one to see, because you kind of want to see where your flat is. And as you can see, these flats here, or these houses, are very, very nice, and I can bet you now that the rent is going to be a lot higher. Where you actually will be living in is here, which is probably an ex-council estate. So that is why it is a bit cheaper, because these were social housing and it's a lot cheaper to purchase those, especially through the council. And as you can see, usually they're not in the best of conditions on the outside. You have to realize that you are probably living in one of those flats where the entry system, you know, like it will be this flat here. So you do have a shared entry with multiple other residents, and oftentimes these entries can be very smelly and stuff like that. So it's very important to go into the flat before and have a viewing. This would actually be a deal breaker for me. I wouldn't want to live in one of these flats, but each to their own. And if you can tolerate a certain risk for a higher reward, then definitely do that, because in finance that is a good strategy to have. So you can read through the description. It doesn't say anything about the deposit, but I'm guessing the deposit will be around 1,600 maybe. So it is important that you contact them with details about the deposit. So let's go to the next property, which is in SE4. So the first thing I would do is to check the map and see how far away it is. So this is so far from me. Like this, I know to get into Central from this area will literally take an hour. So that's why it's a lot cheaper, and I can bet you it's a lot bigger too. Yeah, so most of these places will have a plan like this. So you can tell this place is 459 square foot, which is actually quite decent, especially for London. You have a nice big living room, bedroom, bathroom. The previous flat did not have a floor plan, but this one does. Flats in this area are a lot bigger and a bit cheaper, but they are quite far out from Central. So if you prefer to do that, you could do that. And this type of property here is actually very well made. You can tell by the brick facade of it. You even have a little garden bit here, and this will be the main lounge bit, which is decently spaced. You have a decently sized kitchen too, with a full fridge freezer here, an oven, a washing machine, everything you really need. And here the bedroom's quite small, as you can see. That is probably why the desk was in the living room, and probably not enough space here for a desk. But you do seem to get a very large wardrobe, which is a plus, especially when you're living with two people. You do need a very large wardrobe, in my opinion. A decent bathroom, nothing out of the ordinary. And here's the lounge. The lounge is very big, it seems. A very small dining table. It's got space for a big sofa, TV, even a desk. So decently sized property, and it looks like a good quality property. Of course, the furnishing is all over the place in terms of aesthetics and interior design, but that's a story for another person. So if you go into this apartment here, you should realize that this property here is highlighted because it is a sponsored one, and the advertiser landlord probably paid for this come up earlier. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's a great deal, it just means that someone's paid for it. So this one's in N7, so open the map. So it is very far from Central. Even though it looks quite close, it's actually not that close. From experience, even here is not too close. But this is £1,325, long-term furnished. From the outside you can see it's probably another one of those ex-council flats, or partially council flats. It has a very decent kitchen. Very decent sized kitchen. As you can see, it is one of those traditional UK council flats where, you know, you have the landings here, a very close proximity with other people. So if that's something that puts you off, that is something to consider with these council flat type areas, is that it's very, you know, to get into your property you might have to pass through another property. There might be a lot of children around and playing football in places that they shouldn't necessarily play. So these are the things that usually people don't talk about or tell you about, and I don't necessarily think that there should be a negative connotation on council housing or social housing, but through my experience there are certain things that you should know about these sort of places. Just because council housing and social housing does attract a demographic that is unable to pay a certain amount of rent due to their personal circumstances, and I'm absolutely not against that whatsoever, but it does attract, you know, a crowd that is typically very different from if you rent in a private only residency. So it is very important that you understand that before you get into properties such as this. But as you can see, the space is huge. Like, it's absolutely incredibly large. What it does look like to me is that this is an all electric property, just because it has one of these heaters. So Certain properties can be either gas and electric, which is very common for the UK, but other properties are all electric, which means the heaters are electric. And electric heat, until very recently, was more expensive than gas, because gas has gone up around 4 times. Electricity used to be a lot more expensive than gas. So that's something to consider, because usually you prefer to have a gas heating because it's a lot cheaper to run gas. But right now I think it's almost even. This looks like an economy 7 heater, which means the heat only really happens at night and it stores into these bricks and it releases during the day. So you should figure out how the heating works, because in the winter the UK and London gets very, very cold. This does seem like a very decent property inside, but the only reason why I do highlight the fact that it is a council estate is because there are often issues relating to that, right, that you should be aware. So it is very important that you go there and find out for yourself what kind of area it is. I mean, it does say it is a peaceful estate, but I mean, you can never always believe everything that you read on the news and also Rightmove. So we're going to look at one more property and then we will finish this video. Okay, maybe 2 more properties. We'll look at this property here, which looks very nice, and then this property here. So this one is in E2, so the first thing I do is look at where it is. So it's very close to Bethnal Green Underground Station, which is on the Central Line, very, very close to Bethnal Green Overground Station as well. In terms of being close to Central, it is very close to Central. It's walking distance, and University office is around here. It's a very good location. It is demanding a high price. As you can see, this property is very, very nice looking. You can tell straight away it's built very nicely. One thing to notice is that it is unfurnished, probably why it's a bit on the lower side for a property as nice as this. Very nicely refurbished. Very nice kitchen. This is open plan, it looks like. One thing to note, it doesn't have a full height fridge freezer. It has a nice patio area. Very nice bedroom. You can obviously tell that it's a very nice property with very high standards, or which you can only tell on camera. So it's good to go and check if you are a professional at these refurbishments, because sometimes it can look nice but have water damage and stuff like that. Ceilings are incredibly high from what I can gauge here, and very big wardrobe space. You can easily get a probably king size bed in here, and you can get a desk too. Bathroom's a bit on the weird side because it's very unusual shapes going on here. Seems to be fine to me. Yeah, then again, open plan living area with the kitchen. Very nice. But it is unfurnished, hence why the expense. So it is 420 square foot, which is medium to large-ish for London. Not the biggest thing in the world, but because of the open plan, that does open up the living space. It does have a decently sized garden too, so I would be happy with renting this. As long as you have your furniture, this seems like a great place to live. You should look at the street. This street is actually very nice. I'm very impressed by this. Wow, this is near Bethnal Green High Street. Wow. Okay, it's a very nice immediate neighbourhood. This street looks very nice indeed. I'm very impressed. Now let's go to the last property here, which is in SE15, which is around the Camberwell area, I think. So Peckham, that will be the Peckham area. New Cross, yep, that kind of area. So Peckham is an up and coming area in London, Zone 2. It is not too far from Central, although I would not call it close at all. It does have links to New Cross Gate, which then takes you straight into Central, so that is something to consider. And like I said, if you live below the Thames, which is the squiggly line here, the transport links does get a bit not great, but the livelihood around this area is great. It's up and coming. There's lots of bars and restaurants and stuff like that, which is why I always go into the map, because I kind of know London quite well and I want to live in an area where, you know, I know what kind of life it has. So Peckham's great for nightlife and stuff like that. Lots of bars, cozy cafes, and lots of nice people. So this is 1,500 and it does come furnished if you want, but it can be unfurnished or partially furnished, it seems like, because the landlord is flexible. Deposit seems to be the same as the rent, which is not that weird, but not common too. So students can inquire, which is great. The pictures look lovely. This looks like a very nice, well-kept place. It has LED downlights. I know this costs a bit more to implement when you're refurbishing as opposed to normal lights, so this is very cool. These spotlights, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably a few more, I'm not sure what I'm counting, but it's polished to a high degree, it's refurbished to a high degree. You have a decent sofa, very nice bookshelf, lots of light coming in, And that's another thing that I did not mention. For me personally, light is not a huge issue. I'm quite okay with being in the dark for some reason. But if you like lots of open space and lots of light, make sure you go and check what kind of place it is. Some places you might be fooled because during the showing it might be very bright, but maybe after 2 o'clock or a certain period of time, the sun might, be blocked or obstructed by another building, and it just is in complete darkness. So it's something to take into consideration. Usually south facing windows get the most light. Bedroom seems quite basic with a basic bed and what seems like a window into the bathroom maybe. It looks very cool actually. I'm not sure entirely what that is, but we'll probably find out from the next picture. Wow, so it's some sort of balcony. It's an air balcony or one of those garden balconies. Very, very cool. Very, very cool indeed. And you can even see the living room from there. That's incredibly cool. Wow. The kitchen is done very nicely, I have to admit. The degree of refurbishment on this place is excellent. And it's very close to Sainsbury's local and has bathroom. So one thing I am a bit skeptical about is why they haven't shown more of the bedroom. Like, is there any more wardrobe space, or is this it? So that's very important to actually go in and see. Sometimes they have a 3D view of the room, but it doesn't seem like that. The bathroom looks to be in good condition. Everything seems to be in good condition too. So here are all the details. It says minimum tenancy 3 months. You should not be fooled because a tenancy agreement by law is minimum 6 months agreement. So if something is happening less than 6 months, it typically is off the books. So that's something to be wary about. I would definitely not recommend that, to stay for 3 months, because that will not mean you will have a proper contract, and perhaps your deposit might not be protected in that case. But this does go through open rent, which might help you alleviate some of these concerns. But yeah, so that was part 2 of the video on how to rent in London, especially when you're renting a 1-bedroom flat. If you found this video useful, please let me know with a comment down below, and if you have any questions on how to rent in London or anything like that, make sure you ask me. Check out my videos from before about how to rent in London, and I'll try to make more update videos with more information as time goes on. And as always, thank you for watching.